Well, thank you very much, Final. Thank you very much for the invitation for today's program, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. Let me welcome you in the name of the Hungarian Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade. I'm happy to be here, even though it's always kind of interesting to participate such a meeting virtually, but this is our present nowadays. Hungary has made recharging Europe as the motto of its presidency of the Visegrad Group. In the past years, we have faced unprecedented challenges on the global, European, and also on the national level, not least due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic has had, as the fourth wave shows, will continue to have huge effects on all aspects of our lives, to which no sector of the economy or the society is immune. This is particularly true for the cultural sector. Therefore, this two-day conference focusing on the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and on the best practices that have been developed by the V4 countries and their cultural institutions is particularly topical. I would therefore like to thank the Ministry of Human Capacities or colleagues in taking the initiative and organizing this truly important event. The pandemic has transformed human interactions in unprecedented ways. A good example is that this conference also takes place in a virtual space. And the way we all consume culture. This transformation has not only brought about difficulties, but also presented new opportunities. We all had to be creative and find new ways and means to reach audiences. Ladies and gentlemen, cultural diplomacy is a relatively small and in many ways not a traditional domain of culture. However, it encompasses a number of fields: music, performing arts, fine arts, etc., and tries to reach audiences in all age groups in the host countries. So the experience that the Hungarian Cultural Diplomacy Network accumulated when trying to cope with the radically new and unfamiliar conditions due to the pandemic might be useful in a much wider context. Therefore, let me focus my opening remarks on the experiences and the best practices of our ministry, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, which is responsible for the management and oversight of this network of cultural diplomacy. Currently, we have 26 cultural institutes in 24 countries, in 4 continents. These are the flagship institutions of our cultural diplomacy network. Their work is complemented by the cultural diplomacy activities of more than 100 Hungarian diplomatic missions around the world. With the epidemic making it impossible to hold events around the world, our embassies and cultural institutions have also moved their cultural diplomacy activities online. Our starting point was when people everywhere are feeling isolated, insecure, and lacking personal contact, culture and art can and do provide experiences and energy. In spite of the difficulties, the network of the Hungarian cultural institutions has made good use of the opportunity that this new situation created. The 26 institutes implemented more than 2,400 programs in 2020, despite the fact that the vast majority of the institutes had to physically close. Let me highlight some of the results that we have achieved. As a result of the daily use of social media, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram channels, we have been able to reach out to audiences that were previously inaccessible due to long distance or any other difficult of access. A new type of program, the Hungarian Chinese online children's drawing competition called Fighting the Pandemic, organized by our Beijing Institute, reached more than 10 million people in China with more than 72,000 valid entries. The sharing of online content was also quite successful. Around 200 art productions, films, ebooks, online exhibitions, scientific lectures, cultural tourist destinations were presented by each cultural institutes, sharing ready-made contents. Developing our own online content has also become more widespread, and a useful and successful tool in reaching audiences. However, of course, it depends on technique and skills, so we also had to develop ourselves and our colleagues in the meantime. How we have managed to achieve these results, here are some best practices and good examples of our institutes around the world. The Collegium Hungaricum Berlin, our institute in the German capital, created the CHB2Go project. CHB would be the abbreviation of the institute. It's been a project series, a series of short videos promoting Hungarian contemporary culture. And using the institute's technical facilities, they organized showcase concerts and screenings on the outside walls of the institute. In addition, and as a special development, a virtual gallery was created and now operating successfully. Virtual galleries have also been developed in recent months by a number of Hungarian cultural institutes, including the one in New York and the one in Istanbul. Our institute in Paris, in cooperation with the Moholy Nagy University of Arts in Budapest, have produced an online literary detective game, which is now available in more than 10 languages. And the institute has also produced a film series of Hungarian artists, which has been integrated into the programs of several other institutes. Our Moscow Institute introduced Hungary to homes in Russia with a series of cultural, tourist, and gastronomic videos. Online guided tours have become popular in the network of institutes. For example, our institute in Prague has shown several good examples. The online content developed by one institute has been taken over by others on an unprecedented scale at an unprecedented speed. Joint thinking was also being strengthened and new projects were developed together, which can greatly enrich the toolbox of our cultural diplomacy. Thanks to this increased activity, their social media followings have grown significantly, reaching out, as I already mentioned, to segments of the host countries that were previously inaccessible. The online presence has increased tremendously, but overall offline and online, the network of the institutions reached an audience of around 24 million people in the host countries in 2020. And taking advantage of the shortfall and temporary abundance of resources created by the pandemic, we have launched some large-scale developments and projects that we have the cultural and scientific diplomacy field in the longer term. We carried out the complete rebranding of our network. This included the design of a new logo and other branding elements, and their introduction from the beginning of 2021. In the second phase, the network has also changed its name. From the 1st of September, our institutes are called LIST institutes throughout the world, with the Collegium Hungaricums remaining in the same name. We also renewed the websites of the cultural institutes. Now we have a completely new modern website using new digital technologies, and also including a central site, the culture.hu. This new central site is important to inform the Hungarian public as well about the key events and our activities abroad. And we have, of course, invested significant resources in the development of the Institute's infrastructure, because we weren't get used to such an intensive and extensive online presence and creating own material for the online presence. So we had to develop ourselves in terms of the info communication. So this short overview of examples, I was trying to give an insight how we have managed to survive and how we have managed to carry on the cultural diplomacy activities during the pandemic. And I wish you a very successful event. I'm also myself very curious about the outcomes and results of the others who were facing the same challenges globally and in our region, in the Visegrad countries. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Minister, for being with us, for sharing your experience. And it's very good to hear that even the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of that is responsible for the cultural diplomacy is very much willing to start new projects, and is willing to somehow challenge the new virtual life that is facing us every day. So thank you very much for being with us once more. And for those who entered a bit later, and maybe they were not with us from the very beginning, I would like to welcome all of you to the conference Impact and Influence that is organized by the Ministry of Human Capacities here in Hungary. And special thanks to those colleagues again that were very much working on this project and were very much struggling with all those difficulties that this virtual background gives. And also special thanks to Hungarian National Museum that gives the technical background to this conference. And after the first welcome speech, I would also like to introduce today's keynote speaker, Miss Antonia Arahova, who is representing International Federation of Library Association and Institutions in Greece. Very big welcome to you, and thank you that you are participating in our conference. And I would like to give you the word. Anyway, as I know, you will have the presentations with the following program, the impact of COVID-19 on culture. And please know that you have altogether 30 minutes for these presentations, and I will give you the word. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm really delighted, honored, and extremely happy to be here in this very important Congress. And it was important also listening to the Deputy Ministry of Culture talking about significant initiatives that the ministry has taken against the COVID and in order to empower the cultural diplomacy. And as a IFLA President-elect, I will start my presentation. I will share my presentation with you. You can see it? I hope you can see my presentation. Okay. I will put also in a slideshow. Okay, so as IFLA President-elect and as President of the General Council for Libraries in Greece, my presentation will focus on the impact of COVID on culture and, of course, in the role of IFLA and the initiatives that IFLA has undertaken and is undertaking nowadays, and also mentioning examples from libraries worldwide, how libraries worldwide as cultural institutions and educational institutions, of course, they deal with the serious with the serious issue of COVID-19. So, starting my speech, I would like to remind what the Assistant Director General for Culture of UNESCO has said about the COVID. He mentioned, among many other things, that with so much happening across the culture sector and across the globe, UNESCO identified the need for a clearer picture 1 year into the pandemic to provide decision makers and cultural actors with current data and practices and guidance to better inform strategies for the future. And this is very important because what really the Assistant Director General for Culture of UNESCO had just said, it has talked about strategy and why without specific strategy, I am afraid that we can't deal with such a serious high-risk management issue like the pandemic. In my next slide, I would like to show to you the picture what became viral, and it was designed by UNESCO, and it's in the front page of website of UNESCO, trying to transmit the message what really COVID has done in our mind, in our way of thinking, and in how the pandemic has really had this kind of effects in the way that we are thinking. Among several books and articles that have been published by international organizations like UN, UNESCO, IFLA, and so on, I would like to present to you the front pages of two books. The one is a collaborative issue between OECD and ICOM, and it has to do with COVID-19 and museums, impact innovations, and planning for post-crisis, because always our eyes are on the future, how we are going to deal with the crisis nowadays, but also what we're going to do when this COVID-19 will finish. And the second book is the socio-cultural impacts of COVID-19, published by UNESCO, a magnificent edition, I must say, where in this book you can find the impacts, and especially the social impacts and the cultural impacts of COVID in the whole planet. So UNESCO, except from the books, has published a report, and the title of the report was Disruption and Resilience. And these UNESCO reports reveal new data on impacts of COVID-19 on culture. I'm going to give you some statistics just to have the big picture, as we say, of what is going on in the planet and what was the real impacts of the COVID-19. First of all, 90% of countries were forced to close or partially close their World Heritage Sites 2020. 66% drop was marked in site visitations. 52% declined we had in revenues as survey sites, and also 13% of site surveys that had to do with staff reduction working in cultural institutions. Also, a part of this report had to do a subject about cultural and creative industries in the face of COVID-19, and also what this kind of impact had in the economical field. More of 10 million people worldwide working in cultural institutions, they lost their jobs. And except from the human capital, also the main capital, when we talk about capital, we talk about money, more than $750 billion, it was a significant decline in gross value. And as we mainly all know, in the planet, there are almost 104,000 museums. Last year, only 155 days among these 365 days, these museums were open, and serious concerns now exist about what is going to happen in the next month and in the next 6 months because of the new variation of COVID-19. So UNESCO in this report underlined that the real need for policies that strongly support culture for a successful comeback of the culture. And these good practices, an example of these good practices was a kind of consortium that, let's say, of 246 creative cities who really posed their ideas, their creative ideas about how their cultural institutions can deal with COVID. And except from UNESCO, another a world-known organization, UNICEF, underlined in its own report last month that at least a third of school children worldwide have been completely cut off from remote learning possibilities. And this has a tremendous result, especially when we're talking about the continuance and perhaps a more severe variation that we have to do to deal with COVID. Now, coming to my own waters, as we used to say, talking about IFLA. IFLA is the International Federation of Libraries Association. I'm quite enthusiastic as president-elect and as a person who works for more than 20 years in IFLA and more than 26 years in the library field, having served as a national librarian, as the head of the Presidential Library in Greece, and as president of the General Council for Libraries now in Greece. I have to say that I'm really enthusiastic that all these years I had the great opportunity to work with many Hungarian colleagues like Juni Genether, which is the Deputy Director of the National Library of Hungary, and also Agnes Bayrou, a well-known professor in the library science. So IFLA has really taken many new initiatives to provide to not only to its users but also to people all around the universe with serious informations and mostly reliable informations about what is going on with libraries worldwide and how libraries deal with COVID-19. And what IFLA is doing is trying to create synergies between libraries as cultural institutions with other cultural institutions like archives and museums. So I am going to underline here that libraries is really an instrument for recovery and equity in this pandemic. For example, the Americans increasingly turn to libraries to access resources, skills training, and jobs search assistance, especially after the COVID. And for example, the Berkeley Public Library in California saw a 50% increase in the usage of the library's digital database, which was not so much used as the years of COVID. And this is not by chance. It doesn't happen by chance. This mainly is a phenomenon that has to do with the main sustainability goals that the United Nations have, these well known as 17 sustainability goals, and where libraries play a significant role in the implementation of the, as we call them, as SDGs. Among the 17 goals, I'm going to pick just 4 of them because they are very well connected with high risk management times and as the ones that we all live because of the COVID. Because really libraries are on the agenda, and because in United Nations believe that libraries have a very significant role because they can safeguard the cultural heritage, they can provide university literacy, and they can provide access to information and communication technologies, what we call by abbreviation the ICT. And this is very important, especially when the physical, the in-person contact is not very common because of the COVID, and that digital skills, they're really required even by groups of people that we never have thought of that they should have this kind of need. So the four mainly among the 17 goals that I am going to point out, and that these SDGs really show the significant roles that libraries can play as cultural institutions against the COVID, is the goal number 3, that it has to do with good health and well-being. And we all understand that libraries can provide public access to information and resources that give people opportunities to improve their life, and also public access to health and wellness information, for example, in public libraries, that helps individuals and also families stay healthy. The other goal, it's for me, one of the most important, is the quality education. And we can't talk for culture without having in our mind education, and we can't talk about education without having in our mind culture. So libraries can ensure a inclusive quality education and promote the lifelong learning, because their dedicated staff really support early literacy and also lifelong learning. And why people will really need education? Because we really want to have a good job, a decent work environment, and in order to contribute, each one of us as individual, in the economic growth. And this is the goal number 8. And in this goal, libraries can give access to information and skills training that people need to find, apply for, and succeed in better jobs. And later on, I am going to give you many examples how libraries really offer very important services to people who became unemployed because of the COVID-19. The other goal has to do with innovation, talking about new jobs, talking about education. We're talking about innovation and of course, sustainable industrialization and foster innovation. So the widespread existing infrastructure of public and research libraries and the skilled library professionals can really contribute to this field. And last but not least is the goal number 16, that it has to do with peace and strong institutions. And thinking that libraries, especially public libraries, academic libraries, school libraries, they are neutral places that can provide training in the skills needed in order to use the information. I think this is very important. That's why IFLA and libraries around the world implementing this goal, especially in these very tricky times of COVID-19, IFLA has organized a very specific frame in order to strengthen the collaboration with the National Library Association, providing series of webinars, organizing social media campaign, and promotes the transformation of each person continuing professional development offer into e-learning. And this has to do with what really COVID forced us to do. So what we really did and what we are really doing is redesigning, reassigning, repurposing, redesigning our library spaces. new orientation, new design of inside and outside spaces, and more decentralized initiatives for libraries. And of course, repurposing. Repurposing means synergy with other cultural institutions, like cooperation with museums, with galleries, with archives, and with other also universities, in order to develop new avenues of continuing professional education. So in IFLA website, you can find these links, especially a specific link about COVID-19 and what is going on in libraries worldwide. And also IFLA website is online. Is in an online synergy, let's say, with the WHO, with the World Health Organization, in order to have and to give accurate and concrete information about specific details or according to COVID, also from its website. And IFLA has also a section on health and bioscience libraries and special interest group on evidence for global and disaster health, who are doing a wonderful job. And we have also created a special COVID-19 edition of our popular link, How to Spot Fake News infographic. And I think it is very important, especially nowadays, that we have a widespread raising of fake news, especially concerning the concerns that they have to do with COVID. So IFLA is in a very close cooperation with big organizations like UNESCO, and UNESCO has underlined last week that school libraries in 34 countries will have been affected by the closure of all educational institutions, while in others, at least some schools have been closed, which is very, very important element, statistic detail that we have to have in our mind. And talking as continuing to talk about synergies, I would like to mention one. The acronym is REALM, is Reopening Archives, Libraries and Museums, taken by the Institute of Museums and Library Services in the United States. And this is a partnership with Osil Sin Bateye Institute, in order to explore further how to ensure safe healing, to which IFLA is really contributing according to the accurate information about COVID. And also, I would like to give you some examples, taking some examples from different regions and from different types of libraries. First, starting from the national libraries, and I would like also to congratulate your national library, the National Library of Hungary in Budapest, for the amazing work that it is doing, that the 3/4 of national libraries, for example, have introduced new digital services, while a survey of public libraries in England found the same proportion of them has offered online services. The same happened with La Bibliothèque Nationale de France, which is organizing virtual exhibitions and other learning tools. And also in Spain, La Vanguardia produced a list of 40 innovative ideas of libraries to continue to provide support, but remotely. And also, going to Scandinavia, the Public Library of Aarhus has put its digital content on the front of its website. And in other parts of the world, except from Europe, like the National Library of Morocco, is providing free ebooks to its users. And the National Library and Information Service of Trinidad and Tobago's Heritage Library Division has even used the circumstances of the pandemic to accelerate its shift to provide a digital offer to its users. And of course, In many libraries, we have online story times. This is one of the most common services to the users. And for example, in Portugal, there is a focused YouTube channel, especially for the library users. And in Sao Paulo, in Brazil, and also in Uruguay, we have many kind of similar initiatives offered in their website. And coming back to Europe and to United Kingdom, CILIP, the National Library Association, has launched its National Self-Service, which is a digital service. And also we have story walks with pages of books spread around cities in order to get people reading and walking. And also I have to tell you that the National Library of Mexico has organized a virtual party in order to celebrate literacy and book reading. And coming back to two of the countries that they have a long tradition in providing digital services to the clients, I am going to mention again the American libraries and the Library of Congress, which brought literature, literary and literature festivals online instead of in person. And also in the Netherlands, they reassign budgets in order to pay more for electronic content. And I grabbed the chance to mention some initiatives also from my country, Greece, that the public library has made its job search support service available online. The same services provided to the people who became unemployed is also provided by in Australia and across Victoria in Australia. And going on with my examples, I would like really to congratulate the Dutch National Library, which has teamed up with a writers organization to provide an author on your screen service, where many authors and many writers, really very well known, they use the online services of the libraries in order to get in touch with people. And of course, one of my most favorite examples is the Arlington Public Library in the US, which is working with local children and also with artists, musicians, and painters to produce what we call the quarantines, which is a very impressive and very nice initiatives. And going on with my examples, I would mention the Poetry Slums, the online homework help to children and to students, and public debates. And talking about politics and decision makers, I would like just to mention that in France, a government survey has underlined that increased demand for books is also likely to lead to reallocation of budgets for 2022. And also in the US, the government has decided to expand the Wi-Fi, the internet network of the public libraries, in order people to have access to the Wi-Fi of the library from their cars, which is, and of course, this is for free. And we can't talk about services without, of course, having in our mind what libraries has been doing and what libraries is still doing during the COVID-19 pandemic, providing services as childcare facilities, like the libraries in San Francisco, or of what libraries are doing in order to promote hygiene and really the best advices about how to stay healthy physically and healthy mentally, having in our mind how many people, especially old people, lonely people, they have been affected by the COVID-19. And of course, I couldn't finish these kind of examples without mentioning the Hungarian Library Institute, which has produced an overview of efforts that the Hungarian libraries are taking, dealing and facing the pandemic. Finishing this presentation, I would like just to point out 4 words: synergy, empathy, proactiveness, and effective risk management. We must cooperate together, all kinds of cultural institutions. We must have empathy, we must be very proactive, and we must have ready in our offices risk management plans, because this COVID-19 pandemic is a high risk, but we don't know how many other risks we're going to face in the next years. So I think this is very important. It is very important for politicians, for decision makers, for library directors, and for cultural institutions worldwide. And before saying thank you, I would like to share with you 3 thoughts that they have to do with our theme. The first one, that in cultural institutions, in museums, libraries, archives, galleries, except from the priceless, valuable holdings, what it is really important is the staff. So I like very much the quote of Timothy Healy, who said, the most important asset of any library goes home at night, and this is the library staff. So we must take care of the people who are working in the libraries, in the museums, in cultural institutions, because this is the most important assets in the cultural field. And of course, as I have already mentioned, we can't see separately culture from education. And I like very much what Albert Einstein has said, that education is not the learning of facts, but the training of the mind to think. So it's not only important to know how many people have been affected every day because of COVID-19, but to train our mind, especially we as people working in the cultural field, what to do and how to find the best ideas and the best solutions in order to deal effectively and efficiently with this situation. Because culture is the most important field in people's life. And as Marcus Garvey has said, a people without the knowledge of their past, history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. And myself, coming from Greece, and you, my dearest colleagues, coming from Hungary, we are both from European countries with long history and very important culture. So we fully understand how important it is the cultural sector and how important it is to create synergies in order to deal with this COVID-19 threat. Sorry for my very bad Hungarian. Kunsunum Sepen, thank you very much for your attention. I was really honored and delighted to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, as well, Tonya, for having the presentation, or to showing your thoughts about this subject. I would like to ask all of the participants, because we have still 10 minutes left until the panel discussion, if there is any question to Tonya. Because if not, I would like to have one question for sure, and then maybe another one. You talked about the synergies of cultural institutions. Do you think that during this COVID situation it became better? Are there is there an increasing number of synergies, or we have to work on it still, and that's rather a plan at the moment?
Well, thank you for this question. As we used to say, the enemy of the good is the better, is the best. So I mentioned, for example, Realm is this initiative taken by OSLC and the American Institute for a cooperation between archives, museums, and libraries. I know that in IFLA we are in very close cooperation with ICOM and with ICA, the International Organization for Museums, and the International Organization for Archives. So I think it's time to see our future and design our future, having in our mind that synergy is not just a tool, it's a necessity in order to share resources, to share best practices, and to face this kind of high risk threats like the COVID most efficiently.
Thank you. And anyone else has a thought about Tonya's presentation? If still not, maybe Judith has. Okay, Judith survives me.
Yes. I would like to welcome everybody. My name is Judith Garancher from the National Széchenyi Library. First of all, I would like to thank Sonia for the great presentation and for joining us. And I would like to ask a question concerning the people who are working for libraries, museums, archives, so about the human resource. We were talking about competencies. What do you think? What are the most important competencies, skills, and knowledge which are needed to cope with the COVID situation? So can you highlight some of them?
Thank you, Judith. It's my pleasure also to see you in on screen today, and thank you very much. I think the number one competence is empathy. We have to realize how to approach people. We have to realize that people, it's not only our users or the clients of the libraries, but they are human beings who some of them have really suffered, and they are still suffering from the pandemic. The second is that we must have a very clear, a very clear strategy, and that we ourselves as members of the staff, we are members of this strategy. So we have to know what we are doing and where we are going, because without this, we are just individuals who are working in an environment and with no connection one with the other. And the third, which I think it's the most important one, is to know what the others are doing, because sometimes even in a national level, for example, a library is doing the same thing with another library, and people, they don't know. So it is important to create networks and people to share their knowledge, because knowledge is power only when it is shared.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And still one more question, if it's possible, and if you are still willing to answer. You talked about new digital services in libraries, and also you did the other time there was a conference, she also mentioned several new services in libraries. What do you think? Are they going to survive after the COVID-19 situation as well? So somehow will you implement them, or they are just these pop-up solutions, and maybe they will somehow disappear in the future? What do you think, or how do you see this situation?
Well, I think that these new services, they came to stay. because life is different after COVID, and even if the COVID ends, life will become different. And of course, the skills that people will need to have will become different. And also, we are not, all of us, we are used to this kind of Zoom calls, to this kind of remote education, and to this kind of services, especially provided by cultural institutions. For example, I know that many big museums, they provide museum tours online, and in these tours, there are hundreds and hundreds of people that they are participating. So I mainly believe that these are not on-off kind of pop-up new services, but they are here to stay, maybe not as the main services, but always there, supplementary, when of course all these traditional services will be again the first priority.
Thank you very much. Any other question, maybe? So if not, we still have a couple of minutes until we can start our panel discussion. Please, Tonya, stay with us if you have still time, because I'm sure that after the panel discussion, there will be still some other questions, and maybe there will be relevant for you as well. And now I would like to ask Nora Margitta, who is the coordinator and organizer of all this program, please show up, Nora, for a while, for a minute. And if you have any organizational or coordinational things to say, maybe now it's the best time to do it. Kapcsolódj be hanggal.
Okay, I greet everybody, and I would like to thank to all the participants to appear and cooperate with us. It wasn't so easy, and I think the most important issue would be after the conference that we will share all these materials, all these lectures and presentations, so it will be seen, and I hope it will be really useful. And tomorrow I suggest also to take part in the program, because the good practices will be introduced, which will be very useful and important. I hope so. So nothing else.
Thank you very much again for your effort. And now I think we have 2 more minutes until we can start our panel session. So slowly I would like to call the attendance of the discussion. Please welcome Monika Buczek from National Museum of Ethnography, Warsaw Ghetto Museum, Poland. Thank you very much for being with us. Welcome Zsuzsanna Batári Nagy, Hungarian Open Air Museum, very old colleague of mine. I mean, not she's old, but our colleagueship is quite long. Katarzyna Meissner, National Music and Dance Institute from Poland as well. Hello, Katarzyna. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon.
Accepting our invitation. Judit Gerencsér, who is for surely with us because I saw her before. She's coming from National Széchenyi Library, Deputy Director of National Library. Anikó Rácz, Shin Arts and Culture Ltd. Servus, Anikó. Hello, Anikó. Nice to meet you and nice to have you here with us. Petri Anikó.
Yep, hello.
Oh, Ani, she's also here. Thank you. Welcome here. Anikó is coming from she's a project and marketing manager from Monk Hungarian Creative Art Ltd. So altogether, this is the group that is going to talk. I think that Nora should also be part of our conversation, because now she has the best overview on all these good practices and the project that we are going to talk in these 2 days. And please let me start with a small introduction. I would like to start with the museum issue. Sorry for that, but I'm a museum person, so I have to. That is my duty. As you may know, next year there will be the ICOM General Conference in Czech Republic, Prague. And this event is the best ever worldwide occasion in museums' international lives. So it's held every second year, and practically worldwide, it's a very important occasion for museums. Mainly nowadays, when the debate is highly about the definition of museums, so you can imagine that it's a top issue anyway. How should museums work, and what's museums' identity? On this occasion, Martina Lehmanová, who is a Czech museologist, she is the main organizer of the event and representative of the Czech National Museum. And she was asked in an interview what kind of important changes were caused by the COVID pandemic situation in museum. And her answer was quite interesting, because she emphasized that we couldn't speak about a real turning point in the museum sector. Despite of many attempts on the online communications with the audience, at the system level, the sector couldn't find the appropriate response. So I think this is quite a hard saying of an organizer of ICOM conference. And this is considering my first question. How do you see the other sectors and the situations? Can we somehow adapt ourselves, or is it going to pass sometimes and we will go back to our old life? What do you think of this topic? If you raise your hand, I think you can start.
Okay, if I can start, I think that the pandemic was great opportunity for museums. I know that maybe it's not very popular idea, but opportunity to rethink what we would like to be as a museum, why we are a museum, why we are doing the museum. Because very often we just act in a way that was made for many, many years. And the pandemic was a situation where we have to rethink almost everything about the museums. The first was why we are doing the museum, for who really we are doing the museum, because we know for the audience, but what kind of audience, what more we can do in this situation, and how we can support our audience in this situation, because all of us were threatened by the COVID. We were afraid about our health, our lives, but also about our jobs, incomes. Each part of our life was affected by COVID. So from the first fear, we have to think what we can do more. And this was opportunity to act differently. And I think this pattern will stay. We will do more and more flexibly than before the pandemic.
Thank you. Aniko?
Yes, so I can really only echo these sentiments. I don't think that we should really make such a clear divide between the online world and the online presence of a museum or a gallery space, or in fact any cultural space. and the physical. Obviously, there are many differences, and I think what the pandemic has really brought to light is that people seek out these experiences, and they definitely are engaged with our work, with our spaces, and they desire to come to us for these various experiences. You know, it's not enough to have the artworks or the music mediated through a screen. However, with the way that the world has, and even before COVID, even before the pandemic, we have seen already a shift towards a hybrid system where the online space and the online presence is just as important. I would say is just as important as the physical spaces. So I don't think that necessarily in the future it will be as easy to say that, oh yes, after the pandemic ends, and hopefully it will be soon, that after it ends, we will just all go back to the way that we operated before it, because I don't necessarily see that as the sort of logical development of our world today.
Thank you. Rosie?
I also think that Monica is very right, and we have to build on this idea of rethinking and redefining ourselves, because we also have to react on some notions like social responsibility, because the pandemic itself raises several questions which is connected to it. I think accessibility is also a very important question, because online presence brought about topics of accessibility and sustainability. So when we redefine ourselves, our core functions and relation to our audience, we also have to think about these notions in connection with this task.
All right, Katarzyna.
Thank you. Just a couple of words about our organization. So we are not a museum, but we are also not a concert hall or an artistic institution. We are a national institution supporting artists, musicians and dancers mainly, and institutions. Therefore, it was our institute and theater institute from Warsaw that we together created the largest support program for Polish culture during the pandemic. But also we were dialoguing all the time with Polish Philharmonics, with orchestras, with dance companies. And what we talked today, because just yesterday I had the opportunity to talk with some group of those directors during an on-site. Luckily, we didn't have to meet online, but we could meet on-site meeting. And what we believe is that actually we have to focus on creating new audience. There is a large gap between the old audience that still has the habit of checking on what's happening in theaters and concert halls, with the audience that used to check from time to time, but now they've forgotten, they don't have that in their usual manner of living. And there's this new audience, young audience, who still didn't even had, a chance to develop urge to attend culture. So the focus on this new audience, I think, is very crucial and cannot be designed without thinking about new technologies, obviously. And I believe that the traditional way of participating should be complemented by new technologies. Just as one of you said before, its huge advantage is the inclusiveness of those who had difficulties with access to culture, with those who live in areas that don't have cultural institutions, with those with disabilities, with seniors. Internet brought them back, and that's one of those good things that happened during the COVID. Yet I think the challenge, and I think that was the first sign of how culture had to adapt to culture, is that we need to be in a dialogue also with high tech, big tech companies. They need to support culture. They actually do. Google, for example, was one of the partners of the Chopin competition in Warsaw this autumn. They were themselves very interested in the content provided by the National Institute of Frédéric Chopin in Warsaw. And this dialogue was very fruitful and very good in terms of best practices. And yet there's still so much to talk about. For example, the fees for YouTube recordings, which are sometimes unbearable for small institutions to pay, so they cannot legally upload their content. So I think it's a very interesting case still to be talked, and it would be great to have a larger and stronger voice of couple of countries talking together, for example, with big tech to find the best ways to promote culture. Thank you.
Nincs hang. Nincs hang, Hajné.
Jó, csak annyit mondtam, hogy Anikó.
Yeah.
Aniko. Hi, I'm Aniko Rat, and I also think it's worth saying a few things about the context where I'm coming from. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, because it was frozen for a moment. So I work for an NGO, Shin Art Center. We work with artists, so I'm in one of the studios because the office would be too busy to talk there. So I really work on the field, and I can echo so many things that was said before. But what was mentioned last, that the cost of actually making the content for the screen. When COVID broke out, it was all about going online. And then we just pulled out our documentary videos of performances and then just put it on the screen, which doesn't work like that. It's not something that was made for the screen. So it's also so much about how do we create content that is good for the screen. I work in performing arts, and it's really a live art made for people to be together, to experience it physically. And it's such a big shift to the online, to developing online content. I think artists are still on the go of grasping what it means, what kind of attitude, material, art form is necessary for that. It's actually quite expensive to develop a good quality online material. So that's something, who is going to pay for that? Who is going to support that? Funding schemes have reacted, but in slow motion. So it took a year, like for the National Cultural Fund, to realize that yes, there should be funding to develop online material or online content. So slowly we are learning what this all means, but it took a while. And also there were so many free online contents available, and what does that do to the ecosystem of the artistic scene? Who can afford actually to provide free online material, and who cannot? Who is only gets paid when they are really on stage, the independent field? So there have been so many big questions around it.
Thank you. Nora, maybe?
Only one sentence that as I listened to this ideas, it's realized to me it's how important the participatory management, participatory way of working of different kind of cultural institutions, because it's always a problem how to finance and find new audience, but it's very difficult. So it's the cooperation and the involvement, I think it's really important, and we have to learn it. Sorry.
Judith, what can you see in libraries?
Thank you. So I'm representing libraries in this panel discussion, and I would like to share with you my opinion about it, that we could see that outbreak of COVID-19 caused a widespread anxiety all around the world. So in our libraries, in our museums, art galleries, archives, and so on. And we could see that life changed. but all kinds of institutions, just like libraries, art galleries, museum, and libraries as well, did their best to work hard to provide access to their services and the collections. And I don't know how much you are agree with me, but look at this 1.5 year, I see that we show to the world, and not just the librarians, but I think who work for the museum, art galleries, and archives, that we are the most innovative and the most creative people of the whole world, because we managed to find out everything to the whole situation. So, okay, it was very, very, very difficult in the beginning, because when we started to think about what to do, it was very full of fear, but in the end we found out new technologies, new services, and we were talking about what is going to happen after COVID. Okay, we are not after COVID at the moment, but hopefully we will be there in the future. I think most of our services, which was invented or created during this period, will be with us, and it's a very, very important thing to have it. And also I would like to mention cooperation. You were talking about it between the different kinds of cultural institutions. I think it's also very, very important, and we had very good examples and very good practices, and I would like to ask to continue this cooperation with these institutions, because it's very important for all of us. Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to share this.
What I can see from your responses is that maybe there were not huge changes in the systems of institutions, but still a new idea came up even more strongly than ever, that the service-focused institution is the most important thing. So I think that all of our institutions went to some kind of service-oriented thinking and working, and that's what I can hear out from your answers. And also what comes to my mind, this new technology. Most of you mentioned this new technology. I'm not sure whether we really know what does it mean or what should it mean in a long time, because it's so strange for us, this technology thing. But still, I think that this new technology will have something to do with the changes in our institutions. Does anyone else some idea about this topic? Yes, Ruži?
Sorry, related to Judith, for the topic of cooperation, I'd like to mention teamwork inside the institution, because lots of institutions, there are lots of kinds of institutions with communication staff for communication problems, but there are smaller institutions where one person does everything, and he or she needs assistance from the others. And as I read about this topic of COVID on museums, COVID effect on museums, teamwork and cooperation inside the institution was a very important development. And connected to Aniko and thinking about the financial means to be able to, and the digital means to be able to appear online for an organization or an institution, it's also important to increase staff competence and training of staff, which is very important, and sometimes financially has to be a background for it.
Okay, but what education you mean? So what do you think are the most important competencies? Also, Tonya told about, or she was talking about these new competencies. In your reading, what are these competencies? Oh, Tonya, it's so good that you are here with us.
I think it depends on the range, the size of the institution, because in some of the institutions, even registering on Facebook and appearing in social media is a kind of competence they needed to learn during this pandemic. In our case, in the Hungarian Open Air Museum, we already had these communication channels, Instagram and Facebook and others, and I think that it's a wide range, because you can do online virtual tours or exhibitions with free programs on the one hand, but maybe you can use the competence of a staff who is dedicated to the given development. So this digital knowledge can be different concerning on the size of the institution. Yes.
Okay, Aniko, go ahead.
Sorry, it's like simply marketing and communication competencies. We didn't know anything about how we reach out to our online. What is our online audience? How do we grasp it? So and we are not marketing experts, and I can see that in the cultural field there are not many good marketing experts who know what does cultural marketing mean. There are people coming from the for-profit trying to adapt all their tools coming to this field, but there is so much to learn, and the online audience we still don't really little about. What is that crowd?
Yes, Katarzyna?
That's very interesting. I have the same reflection that marketing culture has to change that totally. And my personal experience is both from culture and business. And I think there is a great lesson we can learn from business. They call it customer experience. I think we can talk about something that I like to call cultural experience. We need to think about the audience as customers. I mean, they buy something from us, and that's why their experience started from communication. It has to be engaging, it has to be interesting. Going through the buying process, how to buy a ticket, how to get to know what are the buying options, and then the experience on site. It's all so-called closed environments from starting to the end. They have to have some kind of experience that will be positive, and they will be interesting to get to know more, not only from one institution, but from others. And I think marketing is the key in that. And usually what we call in culture marketing is usually public relations. And right now we need that change. So I totally agree with you.
Okay, someone else? Okay, I think that we skipped to the topic, this audience and how to reach our audience. I think that we should somehow skip now this philosophical thinking, and let's try to have a look at your good experience that you had because of reaching a new audience. Can you share an experience? Just a small program, just a small topic, just a small idea that was a really good something. Aniko, Petri?
Yes, thank you. So basically, one of the things, and to also give you a little bit of background about our organization, Monk Creative Arts nonprofit. We're an organization who has a very diverse portfolio. Some of our audience would be the artists themselves, the contemporary artists, and that can be either artists at the start of their career who we support with different scholarship programs, but there are also more established artists who we help with gallery spaces, exhibitions, and more traditional kind of guardianship programs. But then, of course, the more front-facing aspect of our organization is the 2 gallery spaces that we have in Szentendre, and also the events that we run all over the country. So from that, and what I can kind of echo and connect back a little bit to what has been mentioned previously, is it was very difficult for us to find a balance on how to communicate and how to reach these different audiences throughout this pandemic situation. But to answer your question, really, is about the positive experience, is that we established a dedicated platform, which was one of the good practices that we're going to continue even after this pandemic is over, where we share little snippets that can either be an article or an interview with an artist. So it was a direct connection with an artist who is perhaps sitting in their studio and creating works, putting out a body of work even during this pandemic, but perhaps they're finding this a little bit difficult to connect with a buyer audience. One of the activities we do is we help artists sell their artworks and find an audience for them. So if you're an artist who is struggling to connect with this buying audience because art fairs have been cancelled, you can't go to these big events where you would normally sell, commercial galleries are also closed, then you can showcase your work in the form of an interview where you yourself as an artist talk about what has been going on in your life during this pandemic and what inspires you in this situation. And we have seen quite great successes with selling artworks in this way, actually. So we are able to go and carry through with this and find the audience that we actually set out to reach in the beginning with these articles. So that has been some of the most positive that I could think of.
Okay, someone else? Now you can show off your good ideas. Judith?
Thank you. So concerning libraries, I can share with you some examples concerning the Hungarian libraries, or I can tell you some examples for the National Széchenyi Library. First of all, I would like to share some examples for the Hungarian libraries. I think digitalization and online digital content is one of the key words in that sense. All kinds of libraries try to be in the online space and to promote their collection in a digital form. Also, the social media was very, very significant to communicate with the users with the help of Facebook, Twitter, and so on. And with the help of the different kind of communications and channels, most of the Hungarian libraries started very new services and very good new initiatives. For example, we can mention the postcards, audiovisual book presentations, the landing and the retrieval of the books moved out of the libraries. You could see some book delivery services or library exchange points. And there was a very interesting service, one of the Hungarian libraries. Hopefully you have heard about it, how to borrow grandma. For the children to help them. So it was a very, very unique and nice service. And about the National Library, I would like to share with you that one of our key best practice or key service was to increase more and more online content. We started 6 online services during the pandemic period. They are available on our website, so I would like to advise to look at them and see them. All of them are available for the general public, so they can be used freely. And also, a good practice or a good example can be the online conferences and online exhibitions. We had many of them. There was a very, very big issue this year because we were the partner of an annual conference perhaps you have heard about this organization. This is the Association of the Hungarian Librarians. This is a civil organization with more than 2,000 members, and they are having each year an annual conference. And when they were thinking about how to solve the situation during the pandemic period, they started to talk with us. And finally, we were the partner of this annual conference. Normally, this conference is personal. But this year, it was not possible to organize this conference in a personal way. So we helped the association to organize this conference in online form. And imagine more than 800 librarians joined to this conference. So it was the first virtual conference of the association. It was a very big success. It was a very big work, but we had a very good practice concerning this conference. So these are the most important good examples from the librarian side. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. Okay, Anikó Rácz.
Just a very, very short notion on that. We are part of a big international network called IETM. This is the Informal European Theatre Meeting. It has about 500 different members all over Europe and beyond. And of course, it had all their conferences and meetings online in the past 1.5 years. And what was beautiful to see that there were so many more young people coming to the conferences, because it's obviously always the first person in the organization who will be able to travel. So we are often amongst the, people, managers over 40 getting together, discussing the same topics, but suddenly there were so many nice fresh voices because from their computers, they just registered and joined, and the conversation became so different. And that was a very nice experience about conferences.
Okay, Monica?
I just wanted to share one thought that I have according to this topic, that all institutions, museums, libraries, cultural institutions went to internet to share their program, their activities, and it is very hard to be significant, to be chosen by audience from the wide range of propositions. In our museums, we of course try to do the best, and the good thing is that we all learn these marketing skills, because now not only marketing department or PR department is responsible for sharing this information, but we also have to think how to encourage our audience to visit the museum websites and, I don't know, Facebook or Instagram to see what we are doing. And it is very, very difficult. And I am very happy that your institutions have successes in this field, because now I'm not longer employee of a museum. 1 month ago, I started my own project connected with the culture, because I noticed with my partner that many people need support. I am psychologist, also museologist, and we wanted to help institutions to go through the difficult changes they have to go through. But on my own experience, being in the internet is not so easy. So we have to work very, very hard, because everyone is active in the internet, in the social media. So really, it's a great job if the museum, the library has a good program in internet to encourage people.
Okay. Petri, Anikó?
Thank you. Yes, I really just wanted to respond to that, the points that Monica was making about, I think most of it really speaks to outreach and how do you reach people who are not already members of your audience. people, because it's very easy. And like she was saying, everyone suddenly was online. And there were so many exhibitions happening and live theatre screenings, and everything was suddenly available to you. And it's easy when you have an audience who are already engaged with the program that you're doing to access them and say, look, we're now just translating what we were doing beforehand in person, and now we're moving it all to the online space. But that doesn't actually work like that, because it's a completely different landscape. The other thing is that for us, and what we found the most challenging, and I think we've had some good successes in actually, is breaking ground with a completely new audience, someone who perhaps through Facebook or Instagram suddenly came across us and was suddenly interested in our work. But again, this is a little bit of a marketing thing, and how do you package all of the activities that you do. For them, it wasn't always the best approach to say that we're doing an online exhibition, because the people who aren't interested to go to a gallery space, for example, obviously I'm very biased coming from this field, if they're not already interested, they might be intimidated by the fact that they're now having to interpret images in an online space. So for them, it was much more successful and better for them to provide other experiences, such as starting a podcast series, or publishing interviews, having Instagram takeovers with artists, and that was also a big learning curve. So I just thought that echoed what Monica was saying.
Katerina, what about musicians?
I'm listening to you, and it's so many experiences together. I think that it's such an interesting landscape to listen to you. The example I could share is actually one of the greatest successes of the last 2 months, which is the previously mentioned the Chopin competition, which was very, very difficult to organize. And the amazing team of the National Institute of Frédéric Chopin did their absolute best and even better to comply with COVID restrictions. And they had to push the competition 1 year forward. And obviously it had some kind of influence on ticket sales and all the arrangements for that competitions. The audience is coming from all around the world, and usually Asia is very strongly represented. So traveling during the pandemic was such a difficult task for them. What they had achieved is right now, just until today, we had the restrictions in Poland that in cultural institutions, you can have maximum 75% of audience, plus the people who took the vaccine people with COVID, with valid COVID passports. So the organizers who wanted to have 100% needed to ask people to show their COVID passports when arriving to on site, to not to count them into this 75%. And it was a challenge during this competition, but the hall was almost every day full. And it was really striking. People were very obliging to the rules, with masks, with everything. And even though the hall was full, also the transmissions were at the record high numbers. So it was a very, very challenging task. And right now in Poland, we have 50% of audience allowed, plus the vaccines. We do hope that it won't get any worse, because as you all know, it's less than 50% is just waste of space and we do hope that next year we'll be able to come back to 100% without any other restrictions.
Okay, thank you. So let's skip to the next question. Actually, I have altogether 4 questions for you. So now this is the 3rd one. And this concerns the education topic. I think that we cannot skip this question. Tonya also put a huge emphasis on education. And my 3rd question is, what kind of best practices could you introduce in order to connect to education? Could you connect to education at all? And what was the best practice? Will it last, or is it just, again, a pop-up project or program? What do you think about this? Judith?
From the viewpoint of the libraries, I think which is our most important task is support lifelong learning. So it is not just a pop-up, but it is a very important lifelong learning task. And I think during the pandemic period, the libraries were working hard to support education. All kinds of libraries, university libraries, school libraries, national libraries, academic libraries, and so on. And I would like to tell you some examples. I have mentioned our new online services. They were very popular, and many teachers, students, professors used this kind of new resources. And there is a very important service of the Hungarian National Library. I'm sure all of you know it. It is the Hungarian Electronic Library. It was very, very important during the pandemic period. At the moment, presently, more than 20,000 volumes are available in electronic form in the library. And more than 60,000 people visited this service during the pandemic per day. So it was a very popular service. And I would like to add one more thing, which is a very good example for cooperation, for example, with museums concerning museum pedagogy, because it was an online service. This is so-called Kapocs. In English, it's Ling, and the Hungarian National Library was part of this project as well. It's a very important, useful tool for students, professors, and we cooperated with other institutions in this sense as well. And I have mentioned earlier our conferences and our online exhibitions. They were very useful to support education, teachers, students, and professors as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Zsuzsi, please.
In 2020, we launched the microsite for the Hungarian Museum. It's called Skanzen Without Boundaries, which is a kind of, which has a double meaning, because it was correlating with the thematic year we organized offline for the season, and it was also related to the year of the national cohesion, which lasted last year, and we could also interpret it as the link between the offline and the online. And here people could find interactive database, for example, virtual exhibitions and calls for example, collecting masks and stories connected to masks. And then we made an offline exhibition about these masks later. And we also had living history films, because as the museum wasn't working, we wanted to provide visitors with the atmosphere of the museum and stories behind the walls. The structure of information, it was very good, and it is still very good. It's still working, because it serves different learner types. And when we made the online exhibition, which was about the effect of the First World War, we also created a new platform for museum education for teachers to use. because it has a high potential, as they can see the database itself, they can see the exhibition too, and they are thematically related to each other. And in this museum education platform, teachers can find different offers. They have 45-minute lesson plans, and if they don't have enough time for that, they can use selected objects with which they can focus the attention of students to different topics of what they are learning about. And it's a very good stepping stone for us, because it opens up dimensions for museum education for those territories where people don't really know about the museum, or they can learn about us and use our material too. So it was very good for us to experiment with this. And we also created a virtual classroom where the teacher and the students can interact with each other and use our content, which is kind of authentic content stemming from the database and the exhibition itself. And one very good thing which is coming from this is that we opened up to the diasporas, because we also do research of Hungarians living far away in the diaspora territories, and we plan to make an exhibition, a virtual exhibition on diaspora culture as well. And in this online sphere, it's much easier to reach them. So it's a very exciting project for us now, and we hope that when it opens in the spring, people will like it, and people will relate stories to this diaspora research. So it's a bit of a complex project for us.
Okay, thank you. Katarzyna, what about you in music? Do you have some educational programs?
We do have educational projects with cooperation with dance, actually, mostly. So I'll talk less about music, more about dance right now. As you all know, the health is the quality of health is dropping drastically during the pandemic, also within young people. So one of our projects that is successfully being implemented from September, is introducing dance lessons within the physical education classes in schools. Mm-hmm. Dance is obviously providing more endorphins. It's great for your health in general. It's about coordination. It's about also mental health. So we think this is a very important step. Obviously, this project has been developed earlier, before the pandemics, and we worked with that together with our Ministry of Culture and National Heritage. Actually, as the same was with many other programs, but some of them were stopped and some of them moved fast forward thanks to this. So right now we are waiting for the results of the first quarter. How did it develop? Because it's absolutely voluntary. Teachers don't have to, but they are encouraged to. They have been provided with dedicated materials to know how to lead such lessons. And we do hope this will be a permanent thing and that this will stay within the program in schools.
Thank you. To Anikos, I have questions for you, because you work practically in an art center, both of you, and the contemporary art from the aspect of education is very important. Could you break through some limits? What could you see in this time of period?
I don't know if it's a breakthrough, but it was so nice to listen to Katarzyna that they actually made that breakthrough. We've been working about this for a long time, how to introduce dance and creative dance, especially in physical education, because that's also about the body, but also about the mind and how you express yourself. So that's something that we would really like to have in Hungary as well. We see how Ben not how, but when it's going to be possible. We work with artists, so as like Monk, but in a much smaller scale. Or primary audience is the artists that are coming through this door each day, like 60, 80 artists come in and rehearse. We also, of course, work with theaters to promote and to present these art pieces that are here. So our primary audience or partners are the artists. And for them, that was also a pre-pandemic initiative. We call it Craft. Or according to our experience, because we are producers, we experience that artists who come out from the art schools, they know everything about working in studios and how to do artwork, but how to develop a career out of the art that they make is not something that they really discuss in academies. So there was a lot missing in skills, competencies. We started from very simple questions such as what is a tax and how do I open my little business? So we have the Craft program, it's really a workshop series. We did it last year at springtime, still at the lockdown. And in a workshop-like scenario, we do trainings on administration, management, communication, collaboration, how to do networking, and how to develop a longer-term career rather than living from project to project, because this is what the pattern is in the independent field, that I have the money for this project, I do that, but what does it serve on the longer term is something that we very, very rarely discuss. So, and it's also referring back to Tonya's presentation, I really believe that learning is about training the mind and to share skills and best practices and to find the best solutions for that given scenario, for that given artist. So it's been a wonderful learning curve for us as well, and a lifesaver in a way that we could, in our homes, we could prepare for that. And there was a very wonderful community gathering around it. And because artists didn't have to spend their times in the studio, they could actually come to the trainings, because it's always a huge leverage that what is more important, I have studio time, so I'm not coming to the training. So we had a very good audience for that, and it's been wonderful. And we are going to go on with it in the next year.
Okay, thank you. And now I would skip to our fourth question. Maybe it's rather, again, more philosophical, but still I think that I should put it. We were talking a lot about audience, about education, how to break through the limits of reaching our audience. And my question would be, as cultural institutions and generally cultural institutions, is the presence or absence of the audience our legitimacy or on our existence, or is there something more? Or is this emphasis just now so important, or generally it's becoming more and more important, this relation to the audience? What do you think of this? Katarzyna?
I think that pandemic showed us that without audience, artists are simply unhappy. And without this
Good.
energy.
Let's go home.
No, but the thing is that it's not that simple, because they still have to connect with the audience. It's not only that they can be present, they still have to work on that. And we've all seen that they were, for example, musicians, they could practice at home. I mean, the violinist can practice at home. A pianist also can practice at home, but they organize in so many ways how to publish their recordings, how to connect with audience. And the first step we took last year, it was May 18th, I believe, in Unfreezing Culture, was allowing artists to come back to training, to concert halls and to ballet classes, just to train. They were not allowed to appear publicly, but they were already allowed to, to meet, obviously with all the regime, but it was a huge step forward. And one of the most interesting cases in Poland that I think is the exemplification of this need and urge of meeting the audience and meeting each other, which is also very important and vital for them, was a recording of a very famous song that was from the 80s with a meaningful text that could relate somehow to how we felt during the pandemics, which was arranged by Adam Sztaba, one of the Polish most famous conductor. And it has been recorded by over 700 musicians with click in their ears and the choir and singers. And because I checked, it has over 13 million views on YouTube only, and it has been published also on Facebook and other media. And that was, when you look at that, when you watch this, you can actually see how they were desperate to go out and go loud also, which is very important. Not that they have, I don't know, 1 or 2 viewers in some kind of private concert, but they could reach a wider audience and somewhat feel the energy. So I think it's answering directly to your question. I would say, yes, this is true. And then I would say, but it's complicated.
Okay. Monica, as a museum person.
Yes, I agree that the audience is kind of base of our activity, and it's really very important because there are 2 ways of thinking about museum. One, that we gather and preserve artifacts of culture. Yes, that's true, and it is very important. But without showing them, without putting them in exhibitions, they are just objects. They show nothing. They don't show our culture, our roots. So without audience, it is very hard to be a museologist, because we can work with just with objects, not with ideas they have in them, not about thoughts that the artist wants to show in the sculpture, in the painting. So yes, the audience is the most important. Nothing matters, it will be face-to-face contact or internet contact, but without it, the museum do not live. It's just a building.
Aniko, Petri?
Like the others before me, I would also have to say that absolutely all the work that we do is directed towards the audience, even as an organization who has a great obligation towards the artists that we support and represent. Their work is also directed towards an audience, and especially with contemporary fine artists, even though it's a stereotype, but it's so true that contemporary art feeds off of the current situations, the social structures, the people who view the art itself. None of it is made for the artists themselves. It's to be enjoyed in a group setting as a communal experience. So for us, I think over the last year, what has become even more important and what has really crystallized in our work is how important organizations can be in bridging that gap between audience and artist, because sometimes providing them with a platform to exhibit, whether that's online or in a physical space, is more important than any other sort of aid that you can give them, because that will ensure that in the long term they will be exposed to people and that their ideas can actually reach their target audience.
Okay, but Tonya and Judith thinks of this approach.
May I start? Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you very much. So I think when we are talking about the 21st century libraries, we have to say that they are student-centered and service-centered. So the library has to fulfill this requirement to work in a best way so nowadays and in the 21st century. And I think a library without users, it's not a library. So in that sense, it's very, very important to have the users. So that's why when we are talking about or thinking of the pandemic period, it was a very difficult time because it was very important for us to keep the users and have new users. And I think that we can say that somehow the libraries are the winners of the pandemic period, because when we are talking about the digital space, the online services, and we are talking about statistics, so we duplicate the users. So when we are talking about the numbers, so I think for a library, the users are very, very significant, and we do our best to fulfill their needs in all respect. Thank you. Sonia, Tonia?
Yes, well, just to add, I completely, of course, I agree with Judith. I think libraries would be like just repositories if there were no users. That's why the last decade we implement the user-centered mentality in libraries, and we define our strategy and our services according to the user's needs. And I listened with much enthusiasm what it was said before by the other ladies about the marketing and the role of promotion. And I must say that in IFLA, we try to make our users the best promoters of the work that we are doing in libraries, because especially public libraries are social hubs where people are going there, and not only to borrow books, but also to find other kind of services, especially during this COVID-19 times. So for us, our users is our oxygen, because otherwise we will be just spaces with materials like books, ebooks, CDs, DVDs, even digital materials. But this kind of materials do not exist, even if they are not people to make use of these materials. So it is the users, for me, it's the first and most important parameter in designing services and strategies for libraries. And as Judith said, yes, we are pioneers, I think, in this pandemic as cultural institutions in providing services to our users. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that this was a very good closing idea. Now I would like to open the question to all of the participants that are with us. We are all together almost 40 at the moment. So if there is any questions of any of the audience, I would be very happy to hear you. And I'm sure that all the participants would be very happy to answer. Okay, if not, then I'm asking our participants whether is there any idea that stuck in and that should come out somehow. If not, then thank you very much for being with us. This day, this panel discussion and keynote speech was kind of warm-up process to tomorrow's very long day. That is going to start with the presentations of the ministers. Afterwards, there will be a presentations of Veszprém European Cultural City of 2023, sorry. And afterwards, there start the two panel discussions, not really discussions, but presentations about the good practices during the pandemic period in cultural institutions. Tomorrow, my colleague Gábor Székely will stay with you. He will be the one who will provide all the day. But of course, I will be also connected and tuned. So I'm sure that I will also enter some conversations and some presentations. I think that's all I have to tell you for now. Thank you very much once more. And please stay tuned with us. See you tomorrow from 10 o'clock. I'm sure that there will be plenty of us that will join the conference, and thank you for being with us. Good luck to your next several weeks, months of this pandemic situation that is even, how to say, more dramatic at this moment. And of course, I wish you a very pleasant preparation for the Christmas time. I wish you to have some calmness and also that you can somehow rest on the end of the year. Thank you very much for being with us, and hopefully I will see you soon tomorrow. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Szia, Hajni!
Na, hello!
Na, jó volt.
Jó volt?
Jó volt. És a Tónya nagyon jó volt.
Nagyon jó volt, igen. Nagyon izgultam, de jó volt.
Még a holnapi napot végig izguljuk.
Jó, oké. Na jó van, ügyes voltál.
Jó, még
Jó.
írok, akkor...
Holnap légy szíves, legyél bekapcsolva, nekem van, amikor majd ki kell kapcsolódnom.
Jó.
Mert lesz ez meg az, de megpróbálom azért nyomon követni. Léci, majd a Gábort segítsd, jó? Mert azért
Persze.
most mindig, jó?
Jó, vele még úgyis van...
El kell mennem most a Kátorhoz, és akkor fogok jelentkezni.
Jó, a Gábornak mondd meg, hogy írtam neki egy e-mailt a Misivel közösen,